I am Johnny Massacre and welcome to my world. Tonight, a review of the movie known as Godzilla Minus One. Who's with me? Give me a hell yeah! So, my Japanese mate loves this film and he told me to see it when I went to England in December, but I didn't see it. And I got back to Japan and he said, "Did you see it?" And I said, "I didn't see it." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to pay for your ticket." That's how much he loves this film. It's the third time he's seen it. And I'm going to review it. So the last Godzilla film I saw was that terrible American one a long time ago. And I haven't seen any Godzilla films until this one. So it is called Godzilla Minus One. It's a 2023 kaiju film, directed, written, and with visual effects by Takashi Yamazaki-san. And to celebrate the franchise's 70th anniversary, the film was released nationwide in Japan on November the 3rd, the same date as the first Godzilla film's release in 1954. There was even a black and white version released of this. Now, its budget is $10 million to $15 million, and it has grossed 10 times that. It's grossed $100 million plus at the box office. And it has received critical acclaim on Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously, we can't really trust this website that much. But 98% tomatometer and 98% audience score, which is kind of impressive. So, yeah, went to see this film with no expectations whatsoever. Now, I didn't know it was on a budget of 10 million, and it looks like it has a budget of way more. Honest to God, this looks better than any Marvel film of the last 10 years. I swear to God, I swear down. So, this film, let's run through the story, and I'll tell you what it's about. So, Godzilla Minus One is a story about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what the film is about. Godzilla is a physical manifestation of PTSD, and the film is about the resulting guilt of a soldier not following through his job as a kamikaze and letting his team die. So the story is as follows. So the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on August the 6th, 1945, and I don't know if this creates Godzilla, but there's this kamikaze dude on this fictional island known as, I think it's Odo Island, and he comes back and he's dodged his responsibility as a kamikaze, and he hasn't kamikazed and killed himself. There's a mechanic there, and he suspects that the kamikaze is kind of dodging his responsibility. And then this not little, it's fucking massive, but it's not as big as it is later in the movie. This dinosaur comes out of the sea, and it's not clear how this thing was made, whether the atomic bomb created it or if it was just there. They talk about this legend of Godzilla around these islands. So it comes out, and it's going to murk all of the mechanics on this island whose job it is to repair kamikaze planes. And the head mechanic, his name is Tachibana-san, he's telling the protagonist, the cowardly kamikaze, whose name is Shikishima, to get in the plane and shoot Godzilla. So Shikishima gets in the plane and he's shaken and he freezes up and everybody dies. So he already had PTSD, as you're going to find out later, because he had guilt. He had survivor's guilt because he didn't complete his mission as a kamikaze. And now he's got another layer of PTSD on top of that because he's got survivor's guilt because he didn't shoot Godzilla and he let all these mechanics die. So Tachibana-san, the head mechanic, he's the only other dude to survive this Godzilla attack. He blames Shikishima for everybody dying. So Shikishima returns to his hometown, and there, everyone blames him again for losing the war because he didn't see through his job as a kamikaze. Tensions are running high. So Godzilla is like a micro event that Shikishima feels guilty for, and World War II is a macro event that protagonist Shikishima-san feels guilty for. He's blamed by Tachibana-san, the mechanic, and he's blamed by society, and he blames himself. So he gets PTSD. I don't know a lot about PTSD. I know you could use magic mushrooms to treat it, baby, some ecstasy. But other than that, the only thing I know about it is there's survivor's guilt. You see your mate get blown up and you think it should have been me. I wish I could have done something. This film is just about PTSD, and Godzilla is just a physical manifestation of PTSD that haunts this guy and chases Shikishima-san around Japan. So back on Honshu, the main island of Japan, Shikishima finds some random baby. It's the orphan archetype. He's going to just leave it, but then he changes his mind because he's a selfless hero, even though he's a bit of a puss. He's a bit of a pussy-hole, and he takes this baby, and then some other bird comes back and she said, oh, it was my baby. So he ends up living with this woman, but he's not shagging her and he's looking after her. You could argue that he's a bit of a cuck, but at the same time, he's a bit of a hero. He's just taking care of this woman. Maybe he's a bit of both, but he's a bit of a cuck, this guy, right from the beginning. He's a bit of a cuck. There's a neighbor in the picture, and I think she's called Sumiko, and she's comes across as a bit of a bitch and a hag, but she's a reluctant participant in all of this. She finds out that Shikishima-san and his new bird, who he doesn't shag, Noriko, have found this baby, and so Sumiko, the kind of angry neighbor who's lost her whole family, understandably so, she's a bit pissed off, chips in and helps look after the baby as well. So the neighbor Sumiko is the caregiver archetype. So there's no cash, bruv. The baby needs to eat. So Shikishima-san comes home to this bird he doesn't shag called Noriko and says, I've got some job. And Noriko goes, wow, the money's really good. What's your job, Shikishima-san? Shikishima reveals his job, and it's a fucking minesweeper, bruv, which means he has to go and blow up all the mines that Muraka has left in the sea around the coast of Japan. So Noriko says, you can't do this, perhaps revealing that she's in love with him, even though they're not shagging. And he says, look, don't worry, I'm not going to die, darling. So now the story advances, and we're introduced to a bunch of other characters, the typical helpers that you need on the hero's journey. And now the film becomes like a Japanese version of Jaws. So it's Shikishima-san, and he's on a boat with these other minesweepers. They're essentially civil servants now. They're working for the government. And the other characters are kind of good. So you've got the Japanese Egon Spengler type from Ghostbusters. He's like the creator and sage archetype. Smart motherfucker. He wears glasses. That must mean he's clever. He's got intelligence and skill, which is his strength, but his lack of strength, his weakness, for want of a better expression, for Japanese Egon Spengler, sage kind of archetype character, is his lack of action, because for all his brains, he doesn't really have much brawn. But that's complemented by the Sea Dog Captain. I can't remember that bastard's name, but he's probably the best character. He's the explorer archetype. Shikishima hooks up with Japanese Egon Spengler and the salty sea dog Japanese captain type dude. And then there's a rookie guy on the boat as well, who says, I wish the war had gone on for a little bit longer, because he wanted glory. And Shikishima-san, in a very cheesy moment, looks at him like this and tries to be intimidating, but he's about as intimidating as Joe Biden asking for a Werther's original. And so you've got those three characters in the boat with Shikishima-san. So I think there's a little subplot going on here with this rookie guy who wishes the war had gone on longer so he could prove himself. So he's got to become a man. Shikishima, he has to somehow face his demons and his PTSD and overcome that. Egon Spengler, don't know what he wants. He's just a clever bastard. And the Captain Sea Dog, he's just a maniac. And he's my favorite character probably in the whole movie. So into the boat! They go in the boat and they're getting rid of the mines, and the captain tries to shoot. What they do is they cut the lines of the mines, they float up to the surface, and then they shoot it with a gun and it explodes. So the captain can't really shoot it. Shikishima-san slowly transforming and growing as a character. He proves his worth to the team. He finds a sense of belonging and responsibility, and he's good at shooting the mines, so that's his job, and he starts to win the respect of the crew. So this kind of shows you why Jaws is such a sick movie, because they're going around on the sea and you know Godzilla's in there somewhere, and there's loads of tension because he could come from fucking anywhere. The sea is just this vast expanse and you can't see what's underneath, so your imagination is filling in the blanks. And it just reminds you of why Jaws works so well. That whole premise of like there's something under but you can't see it and we're floating around and it could fucking be anywhere, anytime. It reminds you why Jaws is so good. So this is kind of stealing a little bit from Jaws, Godzilla Minus One here. So they get the message from the Japanese government that Godzilla's on the way to Japan, basically. And it's fucking massive because the US was testing nuclear weapons on, I think it's called, it's Bikini Atoll or something like that. I can't remember the name. But anyways, Godzilla's coming. The Japanese government says you have to stall Godzilla on this tiny wooden fishing boat. It's wooden because the mines are magnetic and they don't want to get blown up, bruv. And the US can't come to help because something to do with Soviet Russia. Just go with it. And the US has given Japan a couple of old destroyers, boats, like 3 or 4. And those are the only things this tiny little boat, wooden boat containing 4 people have to stave off Godzilla. But the kind of warships of Japan, they haven't caught up yet with the fishing boat that protagonist Shikishima's in, and so Shikishima has to stall Godzilla until these destroyers catch up with them. So this is an anti-government film. Yes, I like that. So they constantly cuss the Japanese government here because the Japanese government are covering up the fact Godzilla's going to destroy Japan, and they don't want the info to get out because they don't want to cause panic. It's obviously a criticism of the Japanese government. They did this with Fukushima. When the nuclear plant was hit by the tsunami, the Japanese government was accused of withholding information. And I think that's influenced this scene in the film where they cuss the Japanese government for withholding information about Godzilla, which is also related to nuclear stuff. You can see the parallels here. And so I did a bit of Wikipedia-ing, and I discovered that the US attempted to suppress information about the radioactivity of the bombs they dropped on Japan. So Harry Truman, the 33rd president of the United States of America, who succeeded Franklin D. Roosevelt, portrayed the atomic bombs in terms of conventional terms. He said they were equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT. And the radiological effects of the bombs were not released initially. So not only in this film do they cuss the Japanese government for withholding information, at another point they also cuss the American government, and that's probably because the American government tried to cover up the what happened with the fallout from the nuclear weapons when they dropped them on Japan. So Godzilla, they find the remnants of a Japanese destroyer, a boat that was munched by Godzilla, and the captain up until this point is all up for it. He's the opposite of Shikishima. Shikishima, the protagonist, is pussing out. He says, we can't fend off Godzilla, it's going to be too strong. The captain, the salty sea dog Japanese captain, he says, no, fuck it, let's just do it. He sees this massive boat that's been munched by Godzilla, and he says, fuck it, let's just turn around and go back to Japan. And this is where Godzilla shows up, and he's massive because America was testing nuclear weapons in Japanese waters. This really happened. And so this is responsible for the initial Godzilla you saw at the beginning of the film growing about 10 times the size, and now it's in its final form, and it's fucking massive. The special effects here are really good. $10 million budget. Looks better than a Marvel film. I swear to God. And when Godzilla appears, it's kind of epic. I kind of had goosebumps. The music, bum, 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 bum. It's fucking awesome. You can see why this film has become so popular and has spawned so many franchises and has spawned so many sequels. For whatever fucking reason, the big bottom-heavy shadow dragon archetype with that fucking music, it's just fucking awesome. So Godzilla appears and it's great, and he's in the sea, bruv. And Shikishima, he's on the gun and he freezes again. And so he's still being haunted by his PTSD, which is literally in physical form, Godzilla in front of him. And Godzilla is kind of terrifying, man. He's kind of terrifying, straight up. We got Yuki in the comments. Konbanwa Yuki-san, Gigi desu ka? Nihon ni sundemasu ka? He says, I'm from Japan and Minus One was okay. We have better Godzilla movies over here. Okay, we will talk at the end, my friend. So Godzilla's kind of scary in this film. He's kind of scary because he's got very slow, deliberate movements. Later in the film when he's walking, he's almost like a robot and he goes really slowly. So there's a kind of a touch of uncanny valley about Godzilla in Godzilla Minus One. Something eerily familiar about him because he's kind of humanoid, but he's still yet distinctly non-human in his appearance and in the way that he kind of moves and stuff. And because he's slow, there's this sense of dread in the film because you have time to anticipate his arrival. If you contrast this to the Godzilla in that OG American one, or I don't know, Smaug in Lord of the Rings, there's no time to really consider his arrival. With a faster, more flexible antagonist, it's about fight or flight. Suddenly you're caught in the moment and you got fight or run. But with this, there's a certain feeling of inevitability about it. And because it's slow and you have time to contemplate it, you feel dread and you feel powerless and you feel a lack of control. And his face is kind of, it's emotionless. It looks like a real lizard, but just, 100 times the size. So he's got this kind of, his ambiguous motivations kind of amplify the fear. Again, you have to fill in the blanks. What the fuck does this thing want? Like, what is it doing? So in this film, Godzilla is very hard to predict or understand. We don't know what he's about, and that just makes him very scary. That also taps into the fear of the unknown. As I said, a faster monster brings a different kind of fear. Our brains are wired to detect and respond to quick movements, as they often signify danger, an immediate danger. But Godzilla's slow movement is kind of not normal for something so dangerous, and that's very unnerving. And he's just fucking massive. He's so bottom heavy. He's like a big scaly sumo wrestler, bruv. Godzilla in Godzilla Minus One. He's like a big triangle. He's got he's got a small, relatively small head, and he's just got this massive ass. And he just comes across as really menacing. And the way that he walks, it just implies a force beyond human capability to oppose. So he's this like unstoppable, unknown quantity. He's kind of ambiguous what he wants, what he's doing, which just makes him more intimidating and more, and just makes him scarier. So, with that said, Godzilla's chasing the boat, and this is quite a cool scene. Now, here I started to notice the sound design of Godzilla Minus One, and it's really, really, really fucking good. As a music producer myself, I can appreciate this kind of stuff. There's like this, there's this kind of ambience. It has an ambient feel, and a lot of it is inharmonic, and some of it's not even musical. It's very dissonant, and it's almost like sound design as opposed to a musical composition. And here you've got this kind of droning sound when this huge Godzilla's chasing the boat, and the music is so good here, and the Godzilla's kind of swimming towards them, and they've got two mines on the boat. So the plan is to just to drop the mine into the water and shoot the mine and blow up Godzilla. So they do that, and there's a big explosion. It's quite dramatic. There's a lot of spray in the sea and stuff, but then he comes back through and he's coming after him. Then they decide to try to get the mine in his mouth. This is obviously impossible, and there's various points in the film where they have these insane plans, and somehow they manage to pull them off. You have to go with it. So they actually drop the mine in the water. It goes in his mouth, and then they shoot it in his mouth, and his head like blows up, and he's lying on the sea. And then like the T-1000, his jaw it just fills in again, and it comes back to life, which is just completely stupid. But I do quite like the thought of a Japanese T-1000 Godzilla. So you've got G-1000, right? You've got Godzilla 1000, straight G. His mouth regenerates. And then right at the end, the heavy cruiser ship finally catches up. They did their job. They stole Godzilla. And Godzilla, he unleashes his death ray upon it. And the way this comes out, I don't know if this happened in other Godzilla films, but it looks fucking wicked in the film. So he's got these parallel lines of serrated spikes coming out of his back, and starting from the tail, when he's going to do the laser, they light up with blue neon, and they go pum and come out, and the next one go pum 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 pum, and they keep going up all the way to his head. It's so stupid. It's so good though. And then he just unleashes this nuclear death ray, and he does that on Takao, the heavy cruiser that they allowed to catch up with Godzilla by stalling Godzilla, but not before Takao, the heavy cruiser, blasts Godzilla and he goes into the sea. So they've delayed the inevitable. They've delayed Godzilla's arrival on the island of Honshu, Japan. So back in the town, Shikishima-san has PTSD overload. He's freaking out, and he's curling up into a ball, and Noriko, the bird who he still hasn't shagged, is feeling sorry for him and stuff. So his bird, who he hasn't shagged, has got a job in Ginza, which was known as the Mint of Tokyo. It's the place where I think the first coin press was ever established in Japan. She's got a job there, so there's work going. She's wearing this nice like formal dress and stuff. And Cuck Shikishima, he's all funny about it because he actually likes her being at home, but he's too much of a beta to say he loves her or to try to bang her or anything like that. So she's basically going to fuck off to Ginza to work there, and he's not too happy about it. Meanwhile, the kid that they've adopted is kind of growing up, and Shikishima-san is having dinner with the crew, Japanese Egon Spengler, the salty sea dog captain, and the amateur guy. And this is kind of weird. So the baby sitting at the table is like 3 years old or something, 2 or 3, speaks some rudimentary Japanese, and it says daddy or something, and right in front of this little girl, he goes, I'm not your daddy. I've explained to you loads of times. I thought, fucking hell, bruv. This is some Japanese father business. That's some brutal shit. I could not believe he said that to little kids. Like, she's fucking orphaned. You're clearly her dad. You're her surrogate father. That was brutal. That was really brutal. So still, the cuck vibes continue to haunt Shikishima as well as the PTSD vibes. Now, Godzilla finally does come to Honshu, and guess what? It goes to the exact place where Shikishima's bird, who he still hasn't shagged, Noriko, is working. And his robotic slow movements are again shown in the film, and he's all intimidating. And it looks so good, the special effects, because it's shot from the perspective of the people on the ground. So usually when you look at these disaster movies, it's this aerial shot and you see it from a place that you would never see it from. But in this film, you see Godzilla exactly how you would see it if it were real. And it looks fucking cool, man. So they're looking out and this just looks so imposing, and it walks over them, and it's insane. So the special effects for $10 million are fucking unbelievable. And it makes me so excited to think that these wanker Hollywood studios who are making the shittest movies ever, they're going to essentially be taken over by these kind of smaller producers, because honestly, special effects are fine in this. For 10 million, absolutely fine. So anyways, Godzilla's fucking shit up. I think Japanese people probably love this part of the film because they're actually seeing their own city in a big budget movie, and Godzilla is fucking up Ginza. He's destroying everything. Very cool. Noriko is in a train, and Godzilla picks up all the train cars, and she's just in the last one, and he's holding it, and it's all ridiculous, and she falls out in the river, and Shikishima finds her, like in the Ginza's fucking massive, and it's complete disaster zone, and Godzilla's there, and everyone's running and panicking, everything's broken. He finds her straight away, which is ridiculous, and unfortunately his bird gets caught in a kind of shockwave blast after Godzilla does his like nuclear ray again, and he's kind of down an alleyway, and she gets blown away. So this is it. Like Shikishima now, this is the part of the hero's journey where the hero experiences a death or a metaphorical death. Like his bird, who he still hasn't shagged, is now dead. He'll never shag her, and that makes him go Super Saiyan into a rage, and he says, right, fuck it, you know, I've got PTSD because I didn't complete my mission as a kamikaze, and because I let everyone die at the hands of Godzilla. Fuck it. Do you know what? I've got nothing to live for, so I might as well complete my mission as a kamikaze and just kill myself and just go and try to kill Godzilla without any kind of common sense. He's just going to go with his rage and just attack Godzilla, and if he dies, so be it. So now Japanese Egon Spengler, still don't know who the fuck this is, this civil servant guy. He hatches a plan to kill Godzilla. So this is kind of funny, because if this had been an American movie, it would have been completely different. So Japanese people are so risk averse compared to American people, and especially compared to American people, and risk averse compared to English people. I'm English and I would know, and I've lived in Japan for 13 years. So Japanese people, they often overthink things too much. They're so afraid of failure, especially publicly. And they're so risk averse. They sometimes get frozen like a rabbit in the headlights, thinking so much about, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what if this happens, and this is what happens in the film. So they're trying to work out a way to kill Godzilla, and every time Japanese Egon Spengler kind of explains his plan, everyone's going, no, but what if this happens, and what if I know if Godzilla were real, or we can compare this to a war, someone's coming to attack you, you'd have to do the same thing. You'd have to weigh up every single outcome and then choose the best plan of action. But still, if this had been an American movie, the character would have gone, do you want to live forever? Let's fucking do it. But in Japan, they're just sitting there going, oh my god, what should we do? How are we going to kill Godzilla? Anyways, he hatches a plan, and the plan is, they've got, I don't understand this shit because I don't do a lot of sciencing myself, but Japanese Egon Spengler says they're going to get all these canisters of freon gas, F-R-E-O-N. You can let me know how to pronounce it in the comments. They're going to have this huge line with canisters of freon gas attached. They're going to attach canisters of freon gas to this huge line, maybe like 50 of them. And they're going to get two boats, and they're going to go around Godzilla and wrap it around him like a belt. And Japanese Egon Spengler has a fish tank model to explain how this is going to work. A bit like in Back to the Future, where he shows how they're going to get Back to the Future, with the lightning strike. And there's something in a fish tank, and then he makes these bubbles appear, and it sinks to the bottom. So this is probably, I don't know if this is a real thing. They probably did when they wrote their film. They found out about this, and then they just put it in the film. So they said, we're going to do that on a macro scale to Godzilla. We're going to cover him with these canisters, and when we pull, I don't know, we're going to somehow release the gas with a trigger, and then that will make Godzilla sink to the bottom of the trench. They're going to get him above this trench, and then the compression will destroy him. But then there's a plan B. So if the compression doesn't destroy Godzilla, they've got these military balloons that I guess they use for amphibious vehicles and stuff, and they're also going to wrap that around Godzilla, and then they're going to pop those if he's still alive, and they're going to bring him back, and the decompression is going to fuck him up and like crush him and shit like that. So that's the plan. But how are they going to get Godzilla above this trench to kill him? Well, Shikishima, who now has no reason to live because the bird he couldn't shag was destroyed in a shockwave from Godzilla, says he will draw Godzilla. He will be the decoy, the bait for Godzilla. He'll get in a plane and draw Godzilla over the trench. So there's this special Japanese plane that never actually made it to World War II, but they were developing it, and they've got some prototype. So they said, okay, Shikishima, you can use this sick plane, but we have to find some mechanic in order to bring it back to life, this plane, because it's not quite finished yet, or to realize the plane. And this will essentially enable Shikishima-san, the protagonist, to face his fate, his guilt, banish the blame that everyone's laid upon him, and complete his mission as a kamikaze. And this is one of the messages of the film, like, is sacrifice morally just? Too Long Didn't Read. The film says, or the film, I believe it conveys that sacrifice is okay if it's self-sacrifice. I mean, Jesus, that story is pretty famous, right? Self-sacrifice, people kind of modern themselves on that. Self-sacrifice is okay. If it's okay for Jesus, it's okay for Shikishima-san. But forced sacrifice, essentially a government asking you to sacrifice yourself, is wrong. That is one of the messages of the film. So sacrifice yourself for your friends, your family, and your fellow man is okay, but not for the government. And then the whole backdrop of war makes that kind of interesting, because the lines are blurred between self-sacrifice and forced sacrifice, because the government conscripts you, so you have to go and do it. And you think, why the fuck should I sacrifice myself for you? Who are you to say what happens to my life? But at the same time, even though you might not agree with the government, you're still kind of fighting for your fellow countrymen, because everyone's in the same boat. So the lines are blurred, and it's quite a difficult, complex subject, sacrifice. But Too Long Didn't Read, self-sacrifice, okay. Compelled sacrifice, bad. So they got to fix the plane. Now, Japanese Egon Spengler says, look, we can get any mechanic, but Shikishima-san says, no, it has to be Tachibana, the mechanic, the head mechanic on that original island of Odo, who said, Shikishima, you wanker, you didn't shoot the machine gun. It's your fault everybody died. So Shikishima specifically wants Tachibana. He goes to the city office and tries to track him down. And eventually Tachibana reappears and he tries to knock out Shikishima. So Shikishima said, it's all your fault, you wanker, in this letter, to antagonize him and make him angry, because that was the only way he thought he could have got Tachibana-san to come. And he explains to Tachibana what's going on. And he says, look, you got to help me fix this plane. I'm going to complete my mission as a kamikaze. And then that is a really good twist in the film. I never thought he'd actually do this, but he says, I'm going to just kill myself. I'm going to kill myself and kamikaze Godzilla. Let's put a bomb in the plane. Don't tell anyone. We'll remove some of the fuel, one of the fuel tanks. We'll switch it with a bomb. That's a massive twist. Suddenly now there's stakes here. This guy he's probably going to die, and we're just waiting for it to happen. It's getting very tense. So that was a really good twist. And so he puts all his cash in a letter. He gives it to his neighbor Sumiko, and he says, look, I'm going. I've got nothing left to live for. Look after the baby. I mean, you should be living for the baby, but anyways, Japanese fathers he gives all his cash to neighbor Sumiko, and he's like, I'm going off to distract Godzilla, and I'm gonna kill myself by driving into Godzilla with this bomb. So we got the final battle, and it's more special effects. The film is really cut between the kind of human story of Shikishima and his struggles with PTSD, his romantic strife with Noriko, and like his adopted daughter and his responsibilities to her. And then you have just the action scenes with Godzilla, and they're quite far removed. But really, yeah, they almost don't. It's almost like two separate movies. But like some movies, like there are some movies like that with the drama side and then the action side where you're just waiting for the action to come. But in this film, I would say the drama side is probably more interesting than the action side. And the action side is just like is some kind of strange like spice to the storyline and proceedings. The acting, I want to say at this point, is not great. It's kind of like 6 to 7 out of 10. It's like a TV program, the caliber of acting. So if you just look at this film like an extended TV series and you're watching all the episodes in one all together, then I mean, it's no worse than some of the stuff you see on Netflix. The acting isn't amazing, but part of me feels that because the acting isn't amazing, it makes the insane CGI Godzilla stuff easier to swallow. It kind of works because it borders on B-movie sometimes. So anyways, Godzilla's coming. They antagonize it by dragging these speakers under the water. Japanese Egon Spengler, that was his plan, and it antagonizes Godzilla to appear. And they tie the Freon gas around it, and then they pull the switch, and then the bubbles come out, and Godzilla goes down into the ocean. It's quite exciting, this bit. And he goes right down to the bottom, and the motherfucker's still alive. so of course. So they pop the balloons come out, and then he's going back up and decompressing, and you can kind of see this huge silhouette in the water, and his face is all getting cracked and shit. But halfway to the surface, it stops, and then all of the, I think the balloons come up. So they guess that he's bitten through one of the cables or something, and the balloons have gone. So he's halfway between the bottom of the trench and the surface of the water. So they try to pull the two boats that have a line attached to them that is attached to Godzilla and what was the Freon gas and the balloons. They try to step on the gas and they try to pull Godzilla up to the surface, but they're not strong enough. At which point, subplot, the rookie guy who wished he had been in the war to basically become a man and prove himself, he turns up, even though in cliche fashion they said, no, you stay behind, it's too dangerous. He ironically comes to save the day with an army of tugboats. So even though the war is all kind of bullshit and the government fucked us up and they lied to us and they got us into this mess partly, the people have all banded together to kind of make shit work. So it's nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with the authorities. It's just the people that made shit happen. So the rookie guy turns up with an army of tugboats, attaches them to the main boats, and then they pull Godzilla up, and he comes up. But unfortunately, the bastard is still alive. At which point you kind of forgotten about Shikishima-san, and suddenly he's there in his plane, and he's ready to finally complete his mission as a kamikaze. The irony of overcoming your demons and facing your demons means you have to kill yourself is pretty strong. You would think that once you face your demons, you're going to live like you've never lived before, but ironically, that's actually the thing that's going to save you. So is the thing that's going to kill you. So Shikishima, he pulls the safety and he flies into Godzilla's mouth and just goes kung like this, and boom, it blows up his head. Godzilla explodes. Just before that point, it was so good because they cut out the music completely, and it was you could have heard a pin drop in the Japanese cinema. It was completely quiet after a lot of that excellent soundtrack with kind of weird dissonant sounds and sounds of Godzilla and the boats and stuff, and then it just goes completely silent, which really, and you could hear people breathing next to you in the cinema, which really added a nice dynamic to the pacing of the film. And then boom, it blows up just as he's about to launch his death ray, and then Godzilla explodes, and you think, okay, that's it. But Shikishima's launched the parachute, and the man is still alive. So he parachutes to safety, and again, a very improbable situation where a character that needs to find another character just finds them instantly because the story demands it. His neighbor, Sumiko, by the way, I should have mentioned before all of this, when he went out and he gave the money to his neighbor Sumiko to look after the baby because he's had nothing to live for because the bird he never shagged, Noriko, was killed in Godzilla's shockwave in Ginza. Just as he left at that point, that neighbor Sumiko received a telegram, but you didn't see what it was. You had the one twist where Shigishima's going to kill himself as a kamikaze. Then you had another twist where there's a letter that's arrived for him, but you don't know what's in it. So the whole time you're thinking, what the fuck's in it? But you kind of have a hunch. It's from Noriko and maybe she's still alive, but the film doesn't tell you. So that's really good. That means you're thinking, no shit, don't kill yourself because maybe your bird is still alive. So all of this is going on in the final scene, which adds to the tension. It's really tense. There's much more stakes. You really want him to survive. The neighbor comes and she gives him the telegram and he looks at it and he goes, what? You see his reaction, but it doesn't tell you. The film doesn't tell you. See, Hollywood, it would tell you, but this film, it doesn't tell you. Then right at the end, he goes to hospital and his bird is still alive. And I thought, this is the point where Shikishima is not going to be a cuck anymore. Shikishima is going to be manly as fuck. He's going to overcome his demons. The other thing is, there's a flashback, and it didn't show you before. Tachibana, the guy who shamed him and enhanced his PTSD, exacerbated his PTSD in the beginning by blaming him for not shooting Godzilla. Who knows? Maybe if he had shot Godzilla, none of this would have happened. Maybe if he had shot Godzilla, he would have died early. And then you probably would have thought the complete opposite. Like, no, like sacrificing yourself is bad. Like, you shouldn't have even shot Godzilla. But anyways, Tachibana, later in the film, when he's doing up the plane, he's very stern and he's this kind of tough Japanese guy and he's saying, yes, you have to complete your mission. You're thinking, Tachibana, you wanker. You shamed him in the beginning, made his PTSD worse, and now you're encouraging him to kill himself. But in the flashback, Tachibana changed his mind. He says, no, you should hit the ejector seat. And he was teaching him about the ejector seat and he said, you should live. So the moral of the story is kamikaze is bad. That was the Japanese government shouldn't have done that. All of this happened before it revealed at the end that this happened, that Tachibana actually wasn't the bad guy he might have appeared to have been in the beginning of the movie. He actually wanted Shikishima to live. So right at the end, after all of this, he finds his bird. She's still alive. She's got some bandages over her eye. And I think he's going to... The cuck is no more. He's going to be masculine. He's going to be manly. He's going to have a deep voice. He's going to say, hey, like, I'm back. What does he do? He starts blubbering like a little baby. And okay, it's okay. It's okay. Like, you're in love with your girl. That makes sense. But he gets on his knees like a cuck and he starts kind of whimpering like a little boy. And he goes, oh! He goes over to her bed and he's just writhing on her bed and shit. And I thought, you're such a cuck, Shikishima. But it was actually a very emotional scene, and that and a few other scenes before it in the last hour preceding the climax of the film, I felt a little bit tearful, which means the film had an emotional effect on me, but I wasn't at the point where I was fighting back tears because the acting isn't quite good enough to sell it to you, but I nearly did. So the film had an effect on me and I was into it. I was into the film. 3 days later, I've forgotten most of it, but I did think about it a lot. It had quite an interesting effect on me. You know how I go deep into shit, and I was thinking about the archetypes of the film and the archetypal meanings and all that kind of stuff. So that's the story of the film. I was into it, was tearful at some points. Godzilla is fucking awesome. The music is great. The special effects are not just good, but they're an achievement. For $10 million to make the special effects, fucking insane. And it gives me hope that we're actually going to get some good movies, because anything coming out of Hollywood is shit, like all that big budget stuff. And so good movies are going to have to be made by more independent producers and people without the pressures of the ESG schools and funds and fucking BlackRock and Vanguard and all that kind of shit. The smaller production houses are going to have to lead the way, but unfortunately they don't have the budgets of the big studios, so we can't have films that are kind of as cool and crazy. But maybe we can now, because with $10 million you can make a film that looks better than Avengers Endgame. This looks better than Avengers Endgame, I swear to fucking God. Budget of 10 to 15 mil, 105 million gross. It did rather well overseas. No wokeness, no diversity, thank God. No inclusion, no black characters, no gay characters, no white characters. Good. Let's have Japanese people. Let's have a Japanese film. You know, if this film had been made in America, they would have put black soldiers in Japan and all kinds of stuff. Not in this one. It's a Japanese film made by Japanese producers, Japanese directors. I looked at it. Japanese sound designer, Japanese actors. Good. As a minority in Japan, I don't want to insert myself into your culture and destroy it and politicize it and shame you. Fuck that. Let's have some good Japanese stuff. Wicked. It's great. It's wonderful. So, great. And American movies compared to this look fucking awful. Like this should win a fucking Oscar. Compared to American movies, this is gold dust. Godzilla Minus One is fucking gold dust. And if you look at it as if it's, you know, if you expect it to have the acting of a kind of TV series, if you go in with those kind of expectations, I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to like it. And also, I want to add that although this film is not woke, Godzilla in Godzilla Minus One is a trans icon. So in the original Japanese films, Godzilla and all the other monsters are referred to with gender-neutral pronouns equivalent to it, while in the English dubbed versions, Godzilla is explicitly described as a male. In his book, Godzilla co-creator Tomoyuki Tanaka suggested that the monster was probably male in the 1998 film Godzilla. The monster is referred to as a male and is depicted laying eggs through parthenogenesis. Okay, so basically Godzilla is a man that can have babies. So he in spite of the fact there's no wokeness here, he still is a woke icon. And the only things that stop this from being like a 8, 9 out of 10 is the acting. The main character's a bit too cuck, and it's a little bit cheesy sometimes. The monster and the family plots are a little bit disjointed, but in a weird way it kind of works. However, that said, for a Japanese movie, this narrative is remarkably restrained. You know, I can't fuck with Hideo Kojima video games because it's just too weird. The storyline's too weird. There's too many plot twists, too much random shit going on. And anime is so guilty of that. This film is remarkably restrained by Japanese standards. And it's clever. As I said at the end, the twist where he goes from being super cuck to slightly less of a cuck by deciding he's going to kill himself. Oh shit, that's a plot twist. And then he leaves, he gives all his money to his neighbor, and then his neighbor gets a telegram, which is obviously from his girlfriend that he thinks is dead, which is the reason he's going to kill himself, but it doesn't explicitly tell you it's from his girlfriend, and you still don't find out until the last moment. It's clever. The plot is smart. It's very well executed. Those two plot twists are really wicked. And also the perspective of the way that Godzilla is presented from a first-person point of view, from the eyes, is really, really smart. As I said, the music is great. The sound design is great. The ambient stuff is next level. And it's decent, man. It's a decent movie. It's a decent movie. So let's go a little bit deeper into this film and the meaning of it. So, like, what does Godzilla mean? What does it represent? So Godzilla is the classic shadow archetype that Jung talks of. He's like the classic bad guy archetype. And he's very evocative. He's very evocative. And I think he's a metaphor for so many things. And partly because he's in the sea, right? And the sea obviously represents your subconscious. The sea is like the surface of the sea is like your subconscious layer. And he like emerges from the sea. So Godzilla is kind of symbolic. If you try to bury something, you try to bury your problems, they're going to emerge out of the sea and they're going to be bigger and worse than ever than when they went in. So Godzilla, he's a metaphor for human problems, essentially. And yeah, he's an archetypal kind of character. He represents the things that are buried within us that we're too afraid to look at, that can kind of come out at any moment. And the longer we try to run from it, the worse they're gonna emerge. As I said, Godzilla is a metaphor for PTSD in this film. So he's about to get PTSD because he has the survivor's guilt of not completing his kamikaze mission. And then that is emphasized when he goes back to Japan and he gets blamed, and then the PTSD comes out. But as soon as he fails to shoot Godzilla, the PTSD comes. So Godzilla is essentially that PTSD that's coming from him shirking his responsibility as a kamikaze. It's manifesting immediately. Godzilla also, I think, represents, he's like a nuclear bomb. He essentially, the original Godzilla, it doesn't say where he comes from, but the lore is that the nuclear testing of America, I think it's in Bikini Atoll, created Godzilla. He comes from a nuclear bomb. So Godzilla is obviously like some kind of illustration of a nuclear bomb, trying to make a character of it and make a kind of an enemy of a nuclear bomb. So he obviously represents a nuclear bomb, but I also think he represents the threat of another nuclear bomb. So after the first one, he represents the potential that the bomb could suddenly come from anywhere at any time. And Godzilla perhaps represents the kind of potential future legacy of the bomb after Hiroshima, like the nuclear fallout and stuff like that. I think he kind of represents that as well. It just has to. And I think he was made in like 50s, so I'm not sure at that time it would have been politically correct for Japan to come out and just start cussing America. So maybe that was a passive way of demonizing America, or just expressing, not demonizing, because I think they were the victims of that situation. You could argue, but then Pearl Harbor, whatnot. But anyways, without going into that side of history, I think it was maybe a passive way to kind of to say how they're feeling about America. And you could say that Godzilla is an allegory for the nuclear age in general. His whole history is tied into nuclear weapons. And so it's mad, because the thing that Godzilla was supposed to have been born from, the American nuclear test in Bikini Atoll, as I said, it's a real story. If you look up the story of Bikini Atoll, the American nuclear testing there, it's fucking insane. So there was a boat called Lucky Dragon No. 5. It was a Japanese tuna fishing boat with a crew of 23 men, and it was contaminated by the nuclear fallout from the United States Castle Bravo thermonuclear weapon. That was the test at Bikini Atoll on March the 1st, 1954. So the radio operator died from radiation poisoning as water went all over it. So they blew up a fucking nuclear bomb near Japan. The water kind of went out, and it landed on some dude, and he got killed, and other ones got poisoned as well. So the fact that Godzilla came from those tests, he's obviously a metaphor for nuclear weapons, like the threat of another nuclear weapon, like radiology, nuclear fallout. And he could even be a metaphor for America itself. Like the way he moves kind of slowly, is that a metaphor for America kind of assimilating and taking over and laying waste to Japanese culture? I do wonder. But he is an archetype, and he represents the shadow, and he's compelling because he's like an illustration of all those adversities and fears that we kind of bury and suppress deep down within ourselves. That's why he's so evocative and so compelling. So there you go. Godzilla Minus One. Surprisingly good. $10 million movie. It's an amazing achievement. I would give it solid 7 out of 10. Like a solid 7. Could be a 7.5, maybe. I mean, it's an 8 if you consider the movie's quality within the current climate of cinema, which is just plagued by terrible Hollywood bloated bullshit. But I think in and of itself, it's like a really solid 7, and has a solid narrative, and it's an amazing achievement for $10 to $50 million. So I recommend to go check it out. 98% tomatometer and 98% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So thank you very much, my Japanese friend, for taking me to see that. I really appreciate it. I got a lot out of it, and I hope I don't get PTSD like Shikishima-san. There will be a sequel, I am sure, and hopefully he'll have become a steak-eating, beer-swilling alpha male in the next one with Noriko under his arm. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me today. That's my review of Godzilla Minus One. And I do see you in the comments. I see Ajay in the comments. I see Internet Tough Guy. I see Jake B, Milky T. Yuki-san says, your channel reminds me of Wakizashi's Tea House YouTube channel. Are you guys friends? I've never met him. I'm so happy there's a Japanese person here. Your English, あなたの英語めっちゃいいじゃない？日本人の英語は大体良くないでしょ。だけど、ユキさんの日本語めっちゃめちゃいいじゃない？ペラペラですか？ユキさん。Fast Clip says, the bird he never shagged sounds like a poss. James Bond movie. The bird he never shagged. That'd be a good James Bond movie. Real Men Cry, says Milky T. So maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. Maybe I'm being harsh. Yuki-san says Juki says June 2 is coming out. I hope it's good. Me too. Although I think they have a forced female protagonist in that in order to meet them Hollywood's Marxist, sexist hiring practices. Yuki says, I thought the host was better than Minus One. My interpretation of Minus One, they took Jaws and sprinkled Japanese and World War II. There's definitely something there. Yuki's onto something there. It's a massive homage to Jaws, that when they get in the boat. But Jaws is way better. But they got the eccentric kind of like sailors on the boat, and they're just going around looking for it. They don't know where it's going to come from. It could come from fucking anywhere. It's a massive homage to Jaws. Milky says, Johnny, there's a fantastic documentary about Godzilla that's been posted on YouTube that you should watch. I think I will. So I might have to go back and watch some other ones. Which is the best one, Yuki? So if you're just joining me, I am Johnny Massacre, and we are reviewing Godzilla Minus One. But if you have been watching from the beginning, then stop your grinning and drop your linen. Donate some cash. And let's keep winning. Streamlabs.com/Johnny Massacre. I believe my PayPal is working again. You can also PayPal me directly on paypal.me, that's .me, /gimme a hell yeah, GIMME. AHELLYEAH. PayPal.me /gimme a hell yeah, or streamlabs.com /Johnny Massacre, or patreon.com /Johnny Massacre. Really need your donations now more than ever if I'm going to survive this month. 22 days to go. Target of $700. We made $262. Can we do it? I do hope so. Austin 316. Give me a hell yeah, Yuki. Yeah, Yuki's wicked. Yuki, I hope you hang around and bring your Japanese friends, because we don't have enough Japanese viewers on this channel, and you are an absolute legend, bruv. You're a legend. So I'm going to go away now, and I'm going to go to sleep, and I will see you lot tomorrow. So thank you for joining me, everybody. Much love, and as always, take care.